Hi, I'm Millie Murillo.
I'm Ashley Torrent.
And I'm Patsy Kenny.
Welcome to the Blue Butterfly Effect podcast, a gathering place for real conversations and quiet revolutions.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Blue Butterfly Effect podcast. And here we are again with Patsy, Millie, and me, Ashley. We're so happy to be here. Today, our topic is quiet revolutions. And this is an important topic for each of us. And I think it's an important topic for the time. And this was inspired by hearing several people that we work with kind of questioning, what do I do right now? Like, how can I be of service? How can I help? And I feel emotional talking about this topic because it is so important. And I think there are a lot of people that are feeling lost as to what their role is in this transformational period. And there's so much happening, not only in the States, but all over the world. So it feels like I think some people have this idea that they have to do something really big and that everyone can see in order to feel like they're participating or they're doing the right thing. So, what I'm noticing is people are judging themselves or maybe judging other people about how they're participating in this time. So, we thought, let's bring this conversation into this podcast. I mean, that's what we do. We talk about spirituality, grounding it, transformative times. And I just want to talk about the quiet revolution. For example, for me, it's often what's happening on the inside. It's happening in the most intimate space within us, but also in the most intimate spaces in our lives. It can be in our relationship, it can be in our interactions with strangers, it can be with our family, it can be with the way we approach our life, and often it's the way we hold ourselves. So that's to me why it's called a quiet revolution, and I think it's undervalued. I think this expectation that everything as loud as the world is, we expect that everything needs to be so big and demonstrative. So today we really want to honor, like, what are those intimate spaces where we can be rebellious, where we can be revolutionaries, and how do we participate? So ladies, I'm going to hand it off to you to see where you want to take it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think that, you know, it's an interesting time to live in to feel like I should be doing something, I should be saying something, I should be doing more, right? And I think that a lot of that has to do with the overstimulation of how much is at our disposal with our phones, with technology, right? It's like really seeing someone somewhere do something at every second of every moment.
God.
And what what I think can we can forget very easily in those moments is, but people are just trying to live their lives. But people are just trying to get their minds right, to get up and go to work every single day, to get up and, provide for their families, to be functional and get their kids to soccer practice, get themselves, some movement. Like, there are there are components of our lives that I think are so important to the foundation of who we are and how we live, um, and how we show up in the world, that really start within, that really start at home, right? So whether you have children or not, it's how am I tending to myself, to be able to hold, to be able to move with what the world is showing me right now. And I think that for me, one of the quiet revolutions that has been very true, for very, like, intentional for me over the last, I would say, over the last 6 to 8 months, has been limiting my intake of, like, social media and news altogether, and minding what I'm thinking, what I'm saying, how I'm speaking to myself, and noticing how that gives me more spaciousness to hold my clients differently, to hold my home differently, right? And I think that one of the things we're that can be misinterpreted in that is that it can be misinterpreted as bypassing, And I think that is just not accurate at all. One, because that's not who I am. I'm not a bypassy person. And I don't think that most people are. I
Yeah.
think that people genuinely feel what's happening, whether it's in the States or in the world. I think they genuinely feel it. I think they genuinely, their hearts are genuinely broken in so many ways for what's happening to other people in the world. But when we come back to who we are as spiritual beings having a human experience, the best way that we can honor and hold this very, sometimes very dark and bleak human experience is to come back to our spiritual nature, the connection to source, the connection to self. And so from that space, we are not bypassing at all. We're actually creating more capacity to see what's happening without becoming completely consumed by it, where we actually forget who we are in the process, where we don't, so that we don't become so overwhelmed and forget that our presence matters. Some calm, some peace of mind matters, because it matters how we speak to others, how we show up in the world, how we're able to hold if someone sees a certain political issue, for instance, differently than us. Like, all of these things matter, but they require actually so much time and presence with self to recognize, okay, well, who am I in the middle of all of this noise? What do I actually believe and feel in the middle of so much happening all over the world? And so when we talk about these air quotes quiet revolutions, it's it's quiet, but it's powerful to be able to come back to self and discern, this is who I am in the middle of this chaotic, transformative shift that we're experiencing collectively.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Very,
Thank you.
yes. Whew. It makes me emotional too. And thank you for generously opening up the space to talk about this. It feels extremely important. And to build off what you just said, Millie, I think that quiet peace, right? Like in terms of, in this podcast, we talk about soul and soul expression and connecting with that truth within us. Like the words authenticity come up a lot, right? And alignment. And within this chaotic time and space that feels even louder than it maybe has ever been during this time we're living, it feels even more important to tend to that space and go within. And in order to hear what our soul is speaking, what our truth is, quiet is like required. And so for me, that quiet comes in the form of, sure, like a slow start to the morning, a ritual around coffee, tending to my thoughts through journaling. But that's not every day. There isn't like a consistent meditation practice or anything like that. But getting out in nature, having a walk through the neighborhood, connecting with people in real time on the ground where I am feels really important. And to your point of like showing up intentionally, we are each part of this collective, right? So that energy that we're bringing, if we can bring forward, if we can process from that space within or within a container, therapeutically or otherwise, with friends who share a similar heart wave space, and then go out into the world from that place of love, from that place of kindness, from that place of openness and compassion. Like that actually is changing the vibrational frequency of the collective. I think that's what was really feeling so deeply when we started talking about introducing this topic today, is that it may appear to be right not enough in this space of everything, everyone sharing everything they do every day, right? But that internal intentionality actually brings forward an energetic shift, and we can trust in that, you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
What I heard you say is it's not a consistent meditation practice, but what I heard was there's consistency in your tending to your peace. And I love that, because you're showing that it doesn't have to be this rigid thing, but it is part of your mindset of
Yeah.
making that a priority. And that's so important. Um, all these little interactions, like you were saying, going out into the world and spreading kindness, I recognize how much they matter, even more that I'm now living in a place, being in a different country with a different language, being new everywhere I go. I can feel people kind of seeing my face and wondering, like, who are they? Who is this person? Like, what kind of energy do they bring? And I'm amazed at when I smile, the transformation, you can feel it between me and the other person. It's like they're waiting, like, who is this person going to be? And here, I'm a white American woman living in a country in Central America. And, Americans have a reputation right now. And
Sure.
so I love smiling. And you can see, whether it's expats or people that live here, you can see they're like, there's this moment of like, oh, like, we can
It's
do this
softening.
together. And it's powerful. It's this exchange between strangers is so powerful. And so when you're talking about going out into the community, it can be like buying a cup of coffee. It can be walking down the streets. I mean, just driving my car. If I see somebody, we underestimate. And I feel like we've lost these moments that are so important. We've lost this feeling of like, that person matters and that person matters and that person matters. And like, going back to some of the basics, the basic human exchange, my God, I just see how valuable it is. And I think of all the times maybe I didn't like welcome someone, like when I was living back in Charleston, or maybe I just didn't pay as much attention. I'm highly attuned to people right now. And it's been really fascinating. I just think it's important to bring it back.
Yeah. I think one of the things from an astrological perspective that the nodes in Pisces, Virgo have taught us, North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo, that's the axes of the day to day. So, Virgo in the zodiac represents our daily routines, our day to day, how we interact with them, how we are able to focus on one thing at a time for the sake of presence. Like, how am I present with this moment in time, right? How am I present when I'm making my bed? How am I present when I'm speaking to someone? How am I present when I'm walking? And then the opposite sign of Virgo is Pisces, and the recognition that our day to day, our life itself is a ritual, right? It is a connection to spirit itself if we are able to be present enough with it. And I find that fascinating that we would be experiencing the nodes in those signs that ask us to be present with our day to day without becoming consumed by the collective. The North Node in Pisces is, how can I observe the world's suffering and not become consumed by it? Because if I become completely consumed by it, then I am not being of service, right? So I found it really interesting that we would be experiencing nodes in Virgo Pisces at a time where the world is what it is, right? And there's something about coming back to our day to day, coming back to the way we interact with our family, with ourselves, with people, with our meals, with just being present. I think that the concept of home is becoming more and more important. And it will become that much more important when Jupiter enters Cancer in June, because Jupiter is the expander. Jupiter is the magnifying glass that puts, this emphasis on this. In this case, it will be the sign of Cancer. What does home mean to me? How am I present in my home? Whether it's like a traditional home, a traditional family, or who do I consider family and home? Where does it feel that my soul, my heart, the moon, right, can be safe? And, you know, when we're talking about revolution, I think it's important to name, right, that I think it's one of the things that's really in our face right now is it's colonization, right? Colonization. And I mean, at this point, it's not news to anyone that we are in the middle of an actual genocide happening in a different part of the world. And when we think of colonization, one of the ways that colonizers dismantled the possibility of a revolution is by destroying families, destroying the family system, right? So when we think about what can I do at this moment in time, how are we tending to family and connection and value and conversation and love and time together? I think this is especially true for, I think it's true for everyone, but I think there's something about this that is especially true for people and families of color, right? We are watching colonization unfold right before our eyes. And again, the dismantling of a family system of values, of cultures, of practices, of all of those things that are such a part of our day to day. That is how you get rid of an entire people.
Sure.
Right? So about this isn't just us ignoring all of these things. There's an understanding, I think, in all of us, in the three of us, where it's like, no, these things are powerful, and this is why, and this is the ripple effect that they have.
Yeah.
So when we come back to home, to the day to day, to being present, to having conversation, right? To the Virgo energy, the Mercurial energy, the communication, the presence, that matters, because what you're building is a solid foundation that no matter what happens, it's very difficult to dismantle.
So beautifully said. So beautifully said. And that's how, when you're talking about not only families, but communities are broken up, and I feel like what we're talking about, like when with revolution, is like coming back to a currency of love, like coming back to a currency of love within self. When I look at American culture in particular, I mean, because that's what I know, and doing the job I do as a therapist, I'm just continuously shocked at the fear-based child rearing, the fear-based participation, the fear-based all of it, and the way for generations we have been raised through fear and shame. And this is a time to come back to love. Like, seriously, and that doesn't mean like ooey gooey love. That means like, what would love do now? How would love hold me now? And I'm also noticing, sitting in this country where it's not money that's bad, but it's what we've done with money to isolate ourselves. It's what we've done with money to make ourselves more powerful and not need everyone. And I'm looking in this country that individuals don't make the kind of money that Americans often make. And they're more dependent on their community here. Here, they need community. They need rides from each other. They need help from their neighbors. And so it's really fascinating. Like, I can feel this grief in me at like, wow, in America, we can have our groceries delivered. The vet can come to your house. You can have an online doctor's appointment. You don't have to rely on anyone. And it's like, whoa, holy crap. Like, again, money's not bad, but look at how money has dismantled community and how that has isolated us from our neighbors and one another. It's really fascinating. So I'm like, how do we come back to like remembering we need each other? We need all people. All people matter. Like, how do we like rewrite this narrative that we're not connected, that we don't belong to one another? Like, it's just so shocking to me that at this point in time, there are people that don't know that the color of the skin or the language you speak or the country you live in, that like it's beyond anything. It doesn't even make sense to me. It's insane. It's insanity. So, and it's not rooted in love. It's rooted in fear of fear of loss of power, fear of loss of control. So fear is this currency. And I think that's also something we cling to our money because we're afraid and we're really missing out. I'm looking at these people. We gave these two women a ride the other day, and I was like, I wouldn't have given two women a ride in the States ever, ever. And I'm like, but isn't that sad? Yeah. And these two women got in her car who did not speak English, who trusted us enough to take them where they needed to go. And I was like, man, we're really missing out.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. No, you know what it's making me think of? Thank you so much for sharing that. It's such a beautiful example of how this plays out, and having that comparison, this lived experience in the US and then now here in Costa Rica. You know, when our country was formed here in the US, we took over indigenous culture. We plowed right through. And the indigenous people, their way of being was that of harmony, of community, of recognizing each other's gifts and calling people into those gifts. It makes me want to cry. Like from a very early age, you were observed, your strengths were mirrored back to you, you were given a name to represent that strength, you had a place in a tribe, and that contribution was felt immediately. And that was harmonious because everyone was contributing through their own unique lens, blueprint, right? You can name it through astrology, right? However you want to name it. But that wiring was celebrated. It wasn't conditioned out of everyone. It was like, what gift will now be entering our tribe, our sacred space, our collective, our community, and what can create and build from here? And that ritual of, you know, making and collecting and gathering and all of that was like built in to the culture. And we came in the power suit. I mean, it came into a suit eventually, but it was like, oh yeah, no, we know better. Like, and plowed through everything from that lens of power and you know, patriarchy. And here we are now, like feeling the effects of that. And if we can return back to not only, again, self, but community and living into our blueprint, our dreams. Like, always talk about how our dreams are a lens toward our purpose. And even in indigenous cultures, dreams were looked at through, you know, the nighttime dreams were an opportunity to see forward, right? To put information together that couldn't be necessarily seen in the waking life. And I think those two kind of like go hand in hand. And so when it comes back to quiet revolutions in this time and space, even having that awareness of what your own gifts are, what might be calling to your heart to create or share or do, that also is a contribution to the collective. And we completely overlook that in this like state of individuation and ladder climbing and like more. That's also associated with change, like that act of like bigger, better, stronger, faster. It's like, no.
No. Well, something you said that was so powerful is, and I was reading this, something similar to what you were talking about, is that these people with different talents and personalities and ways of thinking and ways of moving through the world were honored for their gifts, but now we're diagnosed, you know? Yeah. So in the work I do, everyone's got a diagnosis. They're self-diagnosing. And I'm like, would you have a diagnosis if you were living in a harmonious community? Would you be labeling yourself as, oh, this is my ADHD brain, or this is my whatever? I'm like, we're just diagnosing, and we're living with that identity of there's something wrong with me. And it makes me want to claw my skin off. Like, I just am like, stop, because there was a time when this was like so valued. Like, I think about my son, who would be technically ADHD, but I don't even want to call him that, because I'm like, look at how he moves through the world. He's moving and shaking, and he's taking information, and he's like doing stuff, and he needs like a passion, and he needs these things. And he moves very differently from me. And I love to see. I mean, I would love to think of a name that I would give him. When you said they were given a name, and that was like based on their gifts, you know, it was like social justice music Jake, you know, whatever it would be.
Yes, definitely.
But we really need to rethink like these diagnoses, that there's something wrong with us, rather than like, how cool am I that I came into the world with this motor that needs to move, or I move a little bit slower and grounded. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I think our dreams are, our desires, our dreams are not, they're not there by accident, right? They are intuitive guidance.
Yes.
Move in the direction of this and see what happens. right? Have the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand how the society that we live in can dampen that, right? Can dampen the ability to do it, the even like there's the desire to do it at all or to move in a certain direction. But here's what's happening, right? When we look at, again, from an astrological perspective and how the world is falling apart, there's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why so many systems, right, are dismantling, that are not just because they're oppressing people. It's some of these practices are archaic, all of these things. And what happens when the world falls apart, certain systems fall apart, we get to rebuild.
Yeah.
But how are we rebuilding?
Mm-hmm.
There's an opportunity there to
Mm-hmm.
lean on our dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I'm observing with Saturn moving into Aries, anytime that we have any planet transit the sign of Aries, we want to pay attention to some sort of new beginning, some sort of like new realization, a new passion, perhaps, something new in us that really lights a fire in us. And and is asking us, are you courageous enough to move in the direction of this desire? Okay. With Saturn is the planet of, when we're talking about personal astrology, is self-responsibility. The understanding that I am the authority of my life, the understanding that I am a sovereign being that gets to make decisions around how I want to experience this reality. A lot of people don't like to accept the weight of that responsibility because it implies that they have to let go of a lot of excuses, connections, limiting belief systems, and all of those things in some way, shape, or form keep us safe. But where Saturn is involved, Saturn doesn't care, right? Saturn is not concerned with those things because Saturn is here to kind of sharpen that part of us, like, because there's this knowing of, I know that it's in you. Can you realize that it's in you? So in the sign of Aries, we're moving into an era of about 2.5 years, or a cycle, I should say, of Aries of 2.5 years, where Saturn hasn't been there in almost 30 years. And in Aries, here we are starting a new chapter of what it means to be a sovereign being, self-responsible. How do I want to experience the reality that I live in? And how do I understand that every part of that is my responsibility? What I give my time, my energy, and attention to, where, what am I focused on? What do I want to build? Who do I want to build it with? What am I going to continue finding myself in, and understanding that if there are certain dynamics that I continue to entertain, then it's a choice. There's something about Saturn and Aries that is going to be just so, I don't even know what the word is. It's just going to make things so clear where we can't be the victim of our life anymore. And I think that there is something about that that is so important for where we are moving, because there is no way that we would be experiencing this in a revolutionary time if we weren't meant to get in touch with the fire within us that is either our dreams or our commitments, our family, our home, our peace, our calm, our health, right? For different people, it's going to be different things. And I don't think that it's going to be anything huge and extraordinary. I really think it's going to be coming back to self. That was really long, sorry, but
yeah. It was amazing. You go. Okay. Love that. What do you think in some of the sessions you've been having recently, if I may ask the two of you, what do you think is coming up for people in terms of like recognizing their gifts? Like, is there a sense of, I know I'm meant to be doing something different, or my heart is longing for that? Is there, like, I'm sensing this sense of like permission granting that's required maybe in this time. And I'm just curious if you had any thing to add from that perspective.
It's so interesting you asked that question, because I was thinking about what I'm noticing, that I think what I'm noticing may lead to that, but I'm recognizing that people, I don't think they're conscious of it or not quite yet. And I feel like this is where the work, I hate the word work, but this is where the practice comes in, but that people are recognizing their mind can only take them so far. It's like they're hitting a wall, and there's so much suffering of, they're just lost in the chaos and the overwhelm and the fear. And honestly, the modalities and the fix-its and all of the things, like people are just overwhelmed, but the suffering isn't easing. Like they've sometimes been on this journey for a long time, but it feels like they keep running into the same place. And it's a spiritual journey, and I'm seeing it. And I notice that a lot of my work is about guiding people to learn to care for their human emotions, their human experience. Like it's so fundamental. And I feel like if they can build that foundation, then they can explore the dreams, or they're dreaming, but they can't seem to get there because they're trying to do it through their mind, rather than honoring the human experience and honoring the feelings and honoring the body. And those feelings lead you to the soul. And clearing all the muck so they can hear their intuition. And I'm also noticing some of them know that's where they need to go, but they're so scared their soul's not going to be there to talk to them. They're scared of releasing because the mind is predictable. I know this like territory, it's a bad neighborhood I'm in, meaning like the mind is like a haunted house. I know this haunted house, and they're fumbling around in the dark. I've done it. And I can feel they're scared to open the door, because what if their divinity doesn't meet them? And so it's this really powerful moment of like trying to help people get into their heart, and recognizing it's a practice and it's daily showing up. And some days it's easy, some days it's not, but it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. And that being with the sadness, being with the grief, being with the anger leads to the gratitude and the joy and the love. But I think we're so used to instant gratification, and we're so used to the stories of the mind giving us quick dopamine hits, even if it's not fulfilling, that we're avoiding it. But I'm noticing like the suffering is getting more intense. We're just being called and called, and it requires an incredible amount of trust. I mean, trust, acceptance, trust, surrender, receive. Those are like the 4 pivotal things of like a spiritual practice. And the mind is like, fuck it, I'm going back to like something else. And the mind is really the thing that people are like, everything's happening in the world, but it's really our minds and how we relate to ourselves, that it's like over and over again, we're hitting a wall. So that's what I'm noticing.
Thank you.
That's so beautifully put, so concisely put, because again, we go back to where the nodes are. So wherever the nodes are, that is kind of like our umbrella assignment, if you will, every 18 months, right? So every 18 months, the nodes will switch signs, and they will focus on a different pair of zodiac signs. And each pair is directly opposite of one another in the zodiac. They are at an axis to one another at a 180-degree angle. And so they support one another in terms of the themes and the topics that they represent in the zodiac and in our lives, right? So wherever the North Node is, that is where we will experience the soul growth. That is where we will experience the growing pains, because it is painful to learn soul lessons, no matter how we put it. And the South Node, it's not that the South Node is bad, it's that the South Node represents certain attributes that I think source is saying, what happens if you rely on this a little less and trust that you know enough, that you are supported enough, that there is a foundation beneath you to hold you through the growing pain of the North Node, the soul. So the North Node in Pisces is developing trust in source.
Wow.
The South Node in Virgo is the practice. The South Node in Virgo is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is the planet of cognitive thought and communication. But the South Node is saying, we're not relying on this right now. It's there.
Sure.
And there are certain attributes that you can get from that, like a practice, like implementing this on your day to day instead of feeling like you have to sit on a meditation pillow for an hour a day. How are you speaking to yourself? How are you communicating to yourself? How are you being mindful of your thoughts and the connection to source, right? That's the North Node in Pisces. So the North Node in Pisces is making it really difficult to grasp onto something that the mind is very much used to grasping onto, something tangible. And that's, I don't know, that's so that couldn't be farther from the truth, because source spirit, the all that is just as tangible as anything else. We've just been conditioned to believe that we're separate from it, and that's the thing, we never are. And that's the suffering is really there to make us see, oh, I was never separate from this.
Yeah. It's the
And exactly. So I went off on a little tangent, but I just wanted to I think what Ashley said just matched the astrology so perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, you're seeing it, like, that's what I love about astrology, is you see it in astrology and then the world mirrors, where it is.
Right.
So I feel like that divine space that people may not recognize or are learning to get to or longing to get to, that's where the dreaminess is. That's where we can actually dream. We can't dream from the mind.
No.
I mean, we could, but it's a different kind of dream. It's more like fantasy rather than soulful dreams.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Because it is a
What do you
conversation.
feel? Like, Patsy, what do you feel as far as like what you've noticed?
I think people are really burnt out from the like formulaic approach to sharing their work in the world, or this, again, it's conditioning, right? Because it's like there's so many folks out there and we have access to information in a nanosecond from our fingertips of like what process to follow if we are building a business. And there's proven results. We've named this before on another episode, but it may not work for you the way it worked for someone else based on your own preferences, desires, blueprint, how you move through the world, right? So a lot of times I find I'm in session supporting people and asking questions to help them get clear on how do they want to be showing up within their business. And from that place, we can, and of course, taking into consideration what their gifts are, what their product might be, how they like are in service to folks, and what is the need. There's like components that we're drawing from in order to create a strategic path forward. But it's always from a place of alignment, because, but I feel like we go through the process and there's so many hats you wear as a business owner, that kind of our energy can get like distorted a bit based on what we think we need to do in the order in which we feel we need to do it. When if we, again, take what you're both saying and come back to self, come back to that connection with source, with soul, like the guidance is there. The energy, when we start to recognize that our intuition is speaking to us through our body, through like the somatics of sensation, we can start to, okay, the trust muscle gets to be built up through that process too, of like, oh, I'm feeling really tight around like this idea, or the way of doing this feels constricting. Like, but let's explore a different way of doing this, of like creatively sharing your work in a way you hadn't imagined before. How does that feel? That's much lighter. There's some energy on that. There's some aliveness, as you like to say, Ash. Like kind of taking, again, what you're naming and bringing that forward through this lens of like, okay, how can we tend to the dream? Or is there a dream within this dream or structure that you've already created for yourself that hasn't been tended to? I recently had someone approach me too about questioning, like, do I close the doors on this thing that I created? Like, she's been on a journey of a decade or so of putting herself out there, and it's like not landing, right? It's not connecting. The momentum doesn't feel like it's connecting with the people that she initially sought out to serve. And so we've had this discussion around like, they take different forms. It evolves as we do. The dream evolves as we do. Maybe it wants to have a new mode of expression. Maybe what you created a decade ago does need to close down. Maybe that like storefront is like ceremoniously honored and closed, and something new is forming. And that speaks to the astrology too, Millie, like this newness, this like process of like seeing something through, closing it out, and emerging again in new form.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that is important that we keep in mind with Pluto and Aquarius is the structures and the rules are going to be broken, right? We're transforming those formulas, right? Whether it's for our business or for how we, I don't know, exercise or, we're coming from a time where there was a formula for everything. And if you did steps 1 through 10, this was going to be your result. And for the moment in time that we lived in, that's what we needed for our spiritual human collective evolution. Okay. But we have evolved so much to where the collective soul, the collective consciousness is saying, I think everyone, whether they realize it or not, is pretty well equipped to tap into their own genius, which is what Aquarius represents, and actually contribute something to their community, to their family, therefore to the collective, right? So this Pluto and Aquarius revolution is far more than just protesting, which there's nothing wrong with protesting on the streets, protesting online, being an advocate. Like, by all means, go nuts. Pluto and Aquarius will 1,000% support that, especially with Saturn and Aries. That Saturn and Aries sextile to Pluto and Aquarius over the next 2 years is such a force. But remember, energy is neutral until we give it meaning. Energy is neutral until we direct it, right? So if we feel like, well, I don't know how to be a revolutionary at this moment in time, since I'm not out there marching in the streets, since I'm not doing this or that, how are you being a revolutionary in your life? By honoring the genius in you that wants to come out in some way, shape, or form. And that genius doesn't have to create something, build something, have a business. It can be, I'm going to have a different type of family, right? I'm going to co-parent differently. It doesn't have to be chaotic, right? I'm going to have a lifelong partnership where we might never get married because we don't need that. Like, there is a redefinition of everything that has defined us as a collective, as an individual, that we as individuals with our decisions have more power to restructure and define than we realize. And that's what this is really about. I think that's incredibly empowering, and it's going to touch parts of us where it's like, am I allowed to do that? Do I really have that much power? Yes. Yes, you do. That's what the cosmos are saying.
Yes. Well, that's what, when Patsy was talking about the business, it's revolutionary to have a soul aligned business, to not follow the 6 formulaic steps and actually do things your way. And we could look at every aspect of our lives, from where we live, the way we raise our families, or the way we choose not to have kids, or our partnerships, what we eat, what we put in our bodies, our friendships, the way we show up at the grocery store, whatever it is. there's an opportunity to ask, why am I doing this? Why do I do it this way?
Yes.
Like, and to break some patterns, to break some old habits, and really get into like, how do you want to be doing it? And giving yourself permission, even though your neighbors or whoever may not be doing it that way, that you can do it your way.
Right.
And it can go well. But the problem is we've lived in this, like, these are the rules, these are the steps you follow. And it looks like most people are doing this. So looks like it must be that way. We don't have a lot of that.
True.
Like those rebels or revolutionaries that are like as visible, that are doing things their way and seeing like, oh, that actually works. And I think it's like, stop looking outside yourself and decide, does it work for you?
Yes.
And that has to be enough. That has to be a measure of whether it's successful. Is it working for you? Is it feeling good? Is it lighting you up? Is it harmonious? It's not like a measure of the dollars you bring in or what your neighbors are doing or what they have, right? Right. It's like, does it feel good in here?
Right. I think what we forget more and more and more, but my hope is that enough will happen to help us remind us of this, is that the essence of the universe responds to frequency, responds to our essence. I think we've talked about this before in another episode, but when we are asking ourselves, why am I doing this in this way? Whatever it is, right? And we begin to ask ourselves, well, what feels the most genuine to me?
Yeah.
There is something about the genuineness of your frequency that is responding or is corresponding with the universe differently.
Yes.
And I feel like I'll give a very very day-to-day example, which is so many of the women that I've worked with, right? Again, because of the society that we live in, we have in some way, shape, or form gone through like this redefining the relationship with our body, with our weight, with what size we are, with what we eat, right? And what happens when women start coming out of those constructs and start just saying, I just love my body, and I'm just going to move, and I'm just going to eat what feels nourishing, right? Versus like being constricted. What's really happening there is your soul is saying, I'm tired of you treating this vehicle in such harsh ways. What happens if we nourish it through love? And then your frequency, you're emanating more love. Like none of our day-to-day is separate from spirituality.
Right.
Yeah. It's not. It's one and the same. And that's actually quite powerful to recognize and understand.
It's potent. It's potent. Living in alignment and living in a way that feels actually exciting and good to you is potent. And it does make you more loving. It makes you more generous and more kind, not resentful and angry. And, if you're living by someone else's rules, you're going to be resentful because you're not taking the power into your own hands. You're not making your own choices. And I love what you said, that frequency of like being genuine or authentic. The universe responds. It doesn't mean you're like all, oh, I feel so good every day. But if your choices are based on like what feels good to you, it's so potent and powerful.
Yeah. And more of that, like you saying, the universe responding. I love how Dr. Lisa Miller talks about like spirit, this dialogue with spirit is this like co-creative act. Living is this co-creative act with spirit. And when you're attuned to it, when you're operating from that space of alignment and you're attuned to what the universe is returning back to you, it's just like it amplifies, right? Like it begets more magic, like these unexpected delightful things show up, these opportunities show up, people come onto your path that you didn't expect, that support that which you're creating, or even like holding an intention to make a move or to make a change within your life. Like all of a sudden when you're doing it from that place that feels really good, it's like something you're tending to, a desire you're meeting with that aligned action, stuff starts to line up and you're just like, okay, well, that's fun. That's way more useful than being in the headspace of like constant chatter and criticism and harshness. Like, okay, the world is absolutely undergoing, you know, horrific things. There's this excavation happening. And there are moments that we can still move through the world and feel more in flow, you know.
Yeah.
It's not to say we're bypassing some of these other things, and or that like the holding steady to the intention doesn't require effort. Or like there's times where things line up and it takes longer than you expected, but continuing to return to that practice of trust supports the process. And then in due time, that frequency is a match and things start to flow again.
Right. Yeah. I think to remember that we are the revolution.
Yes. Yeah.
Like each of us individually in our lives, like our life is not insignificant, no matter what it looks like. We are not insignificant. And what you just said, Patsy, is a testament to that. When we come back to trust again and again and again and again, and we create that momentum of trust, not because we're expecting anything on the other side, but because that's become like a foundation of the way that we live. And then the universe meets us because we trust the timing, the divine timing and unfolding of things. That is a different way of living. And when we practice that enough, South Node in Virgo, the incessant, consistent practice, right? How can anything or anyone outside of you have control?
Right.
We are the revolution.
Yes.
Our lives, no matter what they look like, are a testament of revolution. When we heal certain dynamics in families, or at the very least, there is a much more honest interaction in families, that is a revolution.
Yes.
When we are choosing to, communicate differently, bring mental health conversations into our families, like these things are revolutions. As well as I'm going to, what would love have me do? How would love have me look at this, right? How can I see this through the lens of love? And if if I don't have the capacity to do that right now, how can I tend to myself? These acts are acts of revolution because they're just bringing us back to ourselves.
And based on what I've witnessed and the time I've been doing this work, self-love is revolutionary, because like we think we have to be hard on ourselves to have results. And so like if you don't know what else to do, how you hold yourself with love, that is the revolution. Like if we were loving ourselves, we wouldn't be enacting horrific acts. We wouldn't be violent people. Like in everything, in every moment that we put into that collective energy, like I imagine is this big pool, and we can offer, like even an act of self-love lightens that collective energy. But if we're going to judge or be harsh on ourselves, or like shut down to ourselves, or like be mean, then that's just putting more fear in. So these are all of it, every little bit. It's not even little, every bit matters.
So
that feels good.
Yeah, how do we want to close out? And does anyone have anything to share that they're offering or anything like that?
Yeah, I'd love to just like remind people I have a newsletter out, and maybe we close like inviting people to share with us the ways they, like their little revolutions that are happening in their part of the world, or anything like that. We'd love to hear them.
Okay. Well, Millie and Ash, it's been such a delight sharing this space with you both today. I want to thank everyone who's been tuning in, who's been engaging with our platform. We are delighted to engage with y'all, to know that you're feeling some of the same themes that we're living through. You know, it feels less alone as we continue the dialogues outside on the platforms when these episodes air. So we invite you today to share with us your quiet revolutions. We'd love to hear them. Leave them in the comments on whatever platform you're listening to, and we'll continue to chat with you there. Thank you so much for being here. Do either of you have anything you'd like to share in terms of where folks can find you or engage with what you're doing individually?
I'm offering a monthly newsletter that I might speed it up and then have it a couple times a month, but I'm really enjoying the newsletter as a way of connection and communicating. So if you would love, it's called Soul Musings. If you'd love to read it, you can sign up on my website, ashleytorrent.com.
Yeah. And it's a lovely newsletter. I love reading your newsletter.
Thank you.
I am still working behind the scenes on the group offering that's coming up. Patsy's actually helping me put that together, so I'm slowly working on that. I am in no rush for, I'm just kind of trusting the flow of things. You will know more as time goes on, but that's what I'm working on. So it should be coming up and available for everyone like over the summer. So yeah.
Beautiful. A quiet evolutionary approach, Millie. Revolutionary approach. And I too am working on creating content for YouTube. So I'll be launching a YouTube channel under Patsy Kenny Consulting in the near future, in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that. You can go to my website, patsykenny.com, to learn more about when that will be available. Thank you all for being with us.
Yes, thank you. Until next time.
Thank you for joining us. If something stirred your soul or made you smile, share it with a friend or leave us a review. Until next time.